The rain that night came with fury, drumming against the glass walls of Supreme Life Hospital in Abuja, like God himself was trying to wash the city clean. Nurses hurried through the shining hallways, their shoes squeaking over the marble floor, voices sharp through the intercom. "Prepare the VIP suite," Matron Cole ordered, her tone slicing through the noise. It was nearly midnight when the emergency convoy arrived, 3 black SUVs with flashing headlights and men in suits spilling out before the engines stopped. Inside one of them, beneath a white sheet, lay a man who carried the weight of empires. The whispers began immediately. "That's Mr. Leonard Hayes," a young nurse gasped. "The billionaire from Hayes Oil," another murmured. "Didn't his family fight over inheritance last year?" someone added, her voice trembling with curiosity. But amidst all the murmurs, one nurse didn't flinch. Eleanor Brooks. She wasn't the type to gossip. She wasn't the type to fear wealth or fame. She walked calmly to the ICU, her small frame steady, her eyes fixed on duty. When the stretcher rolled past her, she saw him. The old man's face pale as ivory, a faint scar curving through his eyebrow, tubes tracing down to his frail chest. For a brief second, his hand twitched like it wanted to hold something before going still again. Doctors surrounded the bed, machines beeped, and Matron Cole barked orders. Perfume mixed with the sterile scent of disinfectant. "Keep him stable," someone yelled. "BP dropping. We're losing him." But Eleanor stood by the wall, her eyes steady as the monitors flickered red. Minutes stretched into hours until at last, his vitals leveled out. By 2 a.m., the chaos was over. The others left to rest, exhausted and chattering in the hallways. But Eleanor remained. She pulled a chair to the edge of the bed and sat silently. The storm outside softened into drizzle. She studied his face, his beard silver, his eyelids trembling slightly in dreams. She dipped cotton into warm water and gently cleaned the dried blood at his temple. "You've fought enough tonight," she whispered. Somewhere in the silence, thunder groaned like a distant memory. The heart monitor beeped steadily, slow and fragile. At dawn, just as the first faint light touched the windows, the old man stirred. His hand twitched. Eleanor leaned closer. His eyes opened, grey, clouded with age but alive. He looked at her for a long moment, then tried to speak, but his throat rasped. She quickly brought a straw to his lips. "Water," he whispered, his voice like dry leaves. She helped him sip slowly until he coughed and gasped. "You're safe, sir," she said softly. "You're in Supreme Life Hospital." His eyes blinked, scanning the room. "Who are you?" he croaked. "Eleanor Brooks, your nurse for tonight." His gaze lingered on her face. "Don't let them near me," he said suddenly, voice trembling with fear. Eleanor frowned. "Who?" "My people. My family. The ones waiting for me to stop breathing." His breathing hitched, and his hand gripped her wrist weakly. "You're the only one who stayed." She didn't know what to say. The moment felt sacred, like a dying confession whispered to the only soul who would listen. "Rest now," she murmured, placing his hand gently back on the bed. He nodded faintly, eyes fluttering closed. Outside, the rain finally stopped. Birds began to sing on the windowsill as light spilled into the room. When Matron Cole entered at sunrise, she found Elena still sitting there. "You're still here?" the matron asked. Elena nodded. "He hasn't moved." The matron shook her head. "You're a strange girl. You don't even flinch around men like him. Do you know how powerful that man is?" "I just see a sick man," Elena replied quietly. The matron's lips tightened, and she left without another word. The day moved slowly. Doctors came and went, adjusting drips, whispering about legal forms and private guards. But Leonard Hayes, Nigeria's oil baron, the man whose signature could move markets, spoke only to one person, the nurse who never smiled for show. When visitors arrived that afternoon, his lawyer, his children, a woman in pearls, he refused to see them. "If it's not Nurse Elena, I don't want anyone inside," he said hoarsely. The others looked at each other in shock. The matron pulled Elena aside. "What did you do to him?" she demanded. "Nothing," Elena said. "I just stayed." And she did stay. Through meals, through midnight checks, through every whispered breath. She learned his painkillers by smell, his coughs by rhythm, his silences by meaning. He told her things in fragments, about deals that built nations, about nights spent awake listening to the sound of nothing, about power that never felt like peace. One evening, when the lights were dim and the hallway silent, Leonard opened his eyes and whispered, "Do you believe in second chances?" Eleanor paused, unsure. "Yes, sir," she said softly. "Then I need yours." She looked at him, puzzled. His tone was calm, but there was something beneath it, something that carried decades of guilt. "I'll tell you soon," he murmured, "but not yet. Rest now." Eleanor sat back, her heart stirring. She didn't understand what he meant, not yet. But something deep inside her knew this was no ordinary patient. This was a man haunted by more than sickness, a man who had spent 85 years conquering the world and was now terrified of leaving it behind. As night settled again over the hospital, the rain began once more. Eleanor closed the blinds and checked his drip. The machines hummed like quiet prayers. She looked at him one last time before settling in the chair. His chest rose and fell in steady rhythm. No one knew that by morning, this dying billionaire would trust her with a secret that could change not only his legacy, but her life forever. By the next afternoon, Supreme Life Hospital swarmed with expensive perfume and cold eyes. The billionaire's family had arrived. 3 men in fitted suits stood outside the ICU door, their faces carved from arrogance. One of them, Daniel Hayes, was tall, clean-shaven, and carried the kind of confidence that could turn orders into laws. Beside him was a woman in dark sunglasses, phone pressed to her ear. "We have a right to see our father," Daniel barked at Matron Cole. But from inside came the rough voice that silenced everyone. "If it's not Nurse Elena, I don't want to see anyone." Gasps filled the corridor. Even the matron froze. "Sir, your family." "I said no one!" Leonard Hayes's voice broke with pain and authority. Daniel's jaw tightened, his knuckles white. "Who is this Elena?" he hissed. "A nurse?" Matron Cole looked at him helplessly. "He trusts her." Daniel's lip curled. "He's delirious." But behind his anger hid something else, fear. Fear that the old man had chosen a stranger over his blood. Inside, Elena adjusted the billionaire's pillow, pretending not to hear the murmurs through the glass. Leonard's breathing steadied as she placed a cool cloth on his forehead. "They're outside again," she said softly. "Your family." His eyes opened slightly. "Let them wait," he murmured. "They've made me wait all my life." She hesitated. "They're worried, sir." He gave a bitter laugh that turned into a cough. "Worried about my signature, not my soul." Eleanor looked away. She had seen greed before, but not this kind, polished, entitled, inherited like a family disease. That evening, Leonard spoke again, his voice trembling between memory and regret. "Do you know what loneliness feels like in a full house?" he asked. Eleanor shook her head. "It feels like being a ghost while your body's still breathing." He turned to her slowly. "Do you think I'm a bad man?" She frowned. "I don't know you well enough to say." He gave a weak smile. "Good answer." Silence stretched before he whispered, "I've done things I'm not proud of, but one thing I regret the most." His hand twitched on the blanket. Her name was Miriam. Eleanor's heart skipped. "Who is she?" she asked. He didn't answer right away. His eyes stared at the ceiling as if seeing something only memory could replay. "She was love when I didn't believe in love. She gave me something no amount of money could buy. But I left her. Because I was weak." His voice broke. "I thought time would forgive me. It didn't." A tear slipped from the corner of his eye. Elena reached out, placing her hand gently over his. "Maybe there's still time," she said. Before he could respond, the door swung open. Daniel stood there, flanked by the family lawyer. "This nonsense ends now," he snapped. "Dad, you need to sign the hospital release." "Form!" Leonard's expression hardened. "Get out!" "I'm your son," Daniel barked. "And I'm your father," Leonard said quietly. "So you'll do as I say." The tension in the air could have cut glass. "Who is she?" Daniel demanded, glaring at Eleanor. "Your new caretaker? Or something else?" Eleanor swallowed her anger. "I'm just doing my job." Daniel turned to the matron at the door. "This is unprofessional. Replace her." But Leonard's voice thundered again, stronger than before. "If she leaves, you leave too." The hallway fell silent. Daniel's face turned crimson. "You're losing your mind," he said through clenched teeth. Leonard looked at him with quiet sadness. "Maybe. But I finally found someone with a heart that isn't for sale." Daniel stormed out, slamming the door so hard the glass quivered. Eleanor sat back down, shaken. Leonard sighed deeply. "You see, child, when a man builds an empire, he sometimes buries his soul beneath it. I buried mine 30 years ago. With her." "Miriam," Elena whispered. He nodded slowly. "And now, before I go, I must find what I left behind." He gestured weakly toward the bedside drawer. "There's a small black bag under the bed," he said. Elena knelt and pulled it out. A leather satchel worn with age. Inside lay a brown envelope, a silver key, and an old photograph. She held up the photo. It showed a young woman holding a baby, smiling beneath a faded headscarf. "That's her," Leonard whispered. "The only woman I ever loved." Eleanor looked closely at the child in the woman's arms. "Your daughter?" "Yes," he said, voice cracking. "The child I never met." For a moment neither spoke. The rain outside had stopped, but thunder still lingered in the distance. Elena stared at the photo, Miriam's soft eyes, the baby's small hand gripping her wrapper. "What happened to them?" she asked quietly. Leonard closed his eyes. "I don't know. I tried to find them. I sent men, paid investigators, but they brought back lies. They said she moved away. Maybe she's gone, but I can't die not knowing." His voice weakened with every word. "That house, the one in Cuda village, I gave it to her. The key is yours. Find her. Or the child, before I take this regret to my grave." Eleanor froze. "Me?" "Yes," he whispered, "because I trust you. You have clean hands. You'll look for truth, not gold." She hesitated. "Sir, I'm just a nurse. You have family. Lawyers." His lips trembled. "They'll destroy whatever peace remains. Please, Elena." The plea in his tone cut through her hesitation. She nodded slowly. "All right," she said. Relief softened his face. "Thank you." But just as she was about to tuck the items away, the door burst open again. Daniel stood there once more, face flushed with fury. "What's this?" he shouted. His eyes darted to the bag in Elena's hands. "What are you doing with my father's things?" Eleanor stepped back, clutching the satchel. "It's hospital property," she said calmly. "Liar!" Daniel lunged forward, but Leonard's voice cracked through the tension. "Enough!" He coughed violently, each sound like a blow. "Get out, Daniel." The younger man froze. For a moment, his anger faltered into something that looked almost like pain, but it vanished as quickly as it came. "Fine," he spat. "Keep playing your little game. You'll regret it." Then he turned and stormed out, the door slamming behind him again. Eleanor turned to Leonard, who was now trembling. She helped him lie back, adjusting his oxygen tube. "You shouldn't get this worked up," she whispered. His fingers reached for hers weakly. "Promise me," he said. "Promise you'll go." "I will," she said softly. "Tomorrow." He closed his eyes and whispered something that made her shiver. "They'll try to stop you. Don't use your real name. Don't tell anyone." Eleanor sat in silence long after he slept. She watched the monitors blink steadily, her mind spinning between fear and duty. On the bedside table, the photograph glowed faintly under the lamplight. The smiling woman and her baby, frozen in a time when love still meant something pure. Outside, thunder rolled again, deep and low like a warning from heaven. Elena looked toward the window and whispered to herself, "Whatever secret you've been guarding, Mr. Hayes, I'll find it." And somewhere in the quiet hum of machines, the old man's lips curved faintly into a smile, as if he'd heard her. Eleanor Brooks didn't sleep that night. She sat on her narrow hospital bed staring at the brown envelope on her table, its edges already soft from her restless fingers. The photograph of the young woman, Miriam, rested on top of it, her gentle eyes frozen in time, a baby pressed to her chest. The silver key lay beside it, gleaming faintly under the weak bulb light. Everything in her tiny apartment seemed louder than usual. The hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the clock, the distant honk of a car on the empty Abuja road. But none of it could drown out Leonard Hayes's voice echoing in her mind. Find her. Or find the child. She paced the room like a soldier awaiting dawn. "What am I even doing?" she whispered to herself. "I'm a nurse, not an investigator." But then she saw again the way his trembling hand had clung to hers, the fear in his eyes when he said, "Don't let them near me." He wasn't asking for charity, he was begging for redemption. And something deep within Elena, the same part of her that once promised to heal even strangers, refused to let him die with that secret. She made her choice before the first rooster crowed. By sunrise, she would be gone. She packed light. 2 dresses, her nursing ID, her phone, a scarf, and the envelope with the photograph and key. She sent a short text to Matron Cole claiming a family emergency and switched off her phone before guilt could argue back. By 6:30 a.m., she was at Zuba Park, where bus conductors shouted destinations like an auction of destinies. "Kuda! Kuda direct! Last seat! Let's go!" a voice cried. She followed the sound, clutching her small bag close. The bus was old, its windows cracked and its engine growling like an angry beast, but she didn't care. She sat at the back beside a woman with a crying baby and stared out at the wet city streets, giving way to endless red soil. Hours passed. The highway turned into narrow dirt roads, the air thick with dust and the smell of roasted corn. Eleanor's thoughts raced faster than the bus. What if Miriam was gone? What if the child, now an adult, wanted nothing to do with the Hayes family? What if this was all madness born from an old man's guilt? Yet each time doubt rose, she saw Leonard's eyes again, fragile but burning with the need to make peace before his time ran out. She gripped the key tighter in her palm as the bus jolted over a pothole. "Just hold on, Mr. Hayes," she murmured. "I'll find her." "Last stop," the driver shouted sometime after noon. The bus lurched to a halt and the passengers spilled out into a quiet, sun-drenched village. Kuda was nothing like Abuja. There were no skyscrapers, no car horns, only mud walls, zinc roofs, and goats trotting lazily across the dusty road. Children played with tires near a mango tree, and women balanced basins on their heads, humming songs older than the wind. Elena blinked, adjusting to the sudden calm. "Excuse me," she asked a roadside vendor. "Do you know someone named Ojo? He used to work for Mr. Hayes." The old man frying a kara squinted up at her. "Ojo the carpenter or Ojo the caretaker?" "Caretaker," she said. He pointed down the path. "Second house after the well. Green gate." She thanked him and followed the path, her shoes kicking up dust with every step. The villagers watched her curiously. A woman too neat, too foreign to belong. She reached the green gate and knocked. A moment later, it opened to reveal a man in his 60s with calloused hands and weary eyes. "Yes?" he asked. "Are you Mr. Oho?" "Who's asking?" She opened her bag and showed him the photograph. "I came from Abuja. Mr. Hayes sent me." The man stared at the picture for a long moment before sighing. "I knew this day would come," he said quietly. "Come in." Inside, the room smelled of dust and old furniture. A Bible sat open on a wooden table, and a faded calendar from 2015 hung crookedly on the wall. Oho motioned for her to sit. "You said Mr. Hayes sent you?" he asked. "He's very sick," she replied. "He wanted me to find Miriam, or her child." The old man nodded slowly. I still keep the house clean, every week. No one has lived there in years. He reached for a keyring. If you want to see it, we go now, before sunset. They walked, in silence down a narrow path lined with palm trees and whispers of the past. The air grew still as they reached a small compound hidden behind overgrown bushes. The gate creaked open with a sigh, revealing a faded cream house, its roof rusted but sturdy. The yard was swept, the grass trimmed. I keep it like she left it, Oho said softly. Eleanor felt goosebumps rise on her arms. She stepped to the door, her fingers trembling as she fit the silver key into the lock. It turned easily, as though waiting for her. Inside, time had stopped. The living room was simple, a brown sofa, lace curtains, a small shelf of books. Dust floated in the slanted sunlight like tiny ghosts. On the wall hung framed photos. Miriam smiling with a baby. Miriam sitting beneath a tree. Miriam standing beside someone whose face had been carefully cut out of the frame. Elena's throat tightened. She lived here, she whispered. 3 years, Oho said. Then one day she left. No goodbye. Eleanor wandered to a small wooden door at the end of the hallway. That one, Oho said. She locked it herself. I never opened it. Eleanor inserted the key again. Click. The door swung open to reveal a bedroom untouched by time. The bed was neatly made. A faded scarf lay folded on the dresser, the same scarf Miriam wore in the photo. On the wall were childish drawings of flowers and stick figures holding hands. Elena's chest constricted. She opened a drawer and found letters, dozens of them, all addressed to Leonard Hayes. None had been sent. Her hands trembled as she opened one. The paper was yellowed, the ink faded. You left. I waited. I believed your words. Our daughter asks every day, where is Daddy? I tell her stories so she won't hate you. But my heart breaks a little each time. Tears blurred the words. She read another. They came again, men from the city. They brought lies. They wanted money, not truth. I won't let them take what's mine. Eleanor pressed the letters to her chest, her heart aching for a woman she had never met. Then, beneath the pile, she found something else. A birth certificate. The name on it made her gasp. Aisha Miriam Hayes. Born July 12, 1994. Father, Leonard Hayes. Mother, Miriam Hassan. Eleanor covered her mouth, staring at the paper. She's real, she whispered. She's alive. Oho looked over her shoulder, nodding. That's the child. Do you know where she is? Eleanor asked urgently. Ojo hesitated. Maybe. There's an old woman, Mama Uduak. She helped Miriam when she lived here. If anyone knows where the girl went, it's her. Eleanor folded the birth certificate carefully and tucked it into her bag. Take me to her, she said. Oho nodded. 3 houses from the well, he replied. The one with the red goat tied to the tree. As they stepped out of the quiet house, the setting sun bathed the compound in gold. Eleanor turned back for one last look. The wind rustled through the open doorway, carrying the faint smell of dust, old dreams, and something else. Hope. She whispered, Miriam, I'll find her. I promise. And as the door closed behind her, a gust of warm evening air swept through the room, lifting the corner of one forgotten letter, its last line catching the light before folding over again. If you ever come back, bring her to me. The road to Mama Uduak's house was narrow, lined with hibiscus bushes and whispers. Every step Elena took stirred the red dust until it clung to her shoes like the past refusing to be forgotten. She could feel eyes watching her from behind curtains, children pausing their games to stare at the stranger from the city. Beside her walked Oho, silent except for the steady rhythm of his sandals scraping the earth. She's not an easy woman, he warned, but she remembers everything. Eleanor nodded. That's all I need. When they reached the small compound with peeling paint, a red goat tied under a neem tree lifted its head and bleated softly. The faint smell of firewood and dried herbs filled the air. Eleanor knocked twice on the wooden gate. A voice, cracked with age yet sharp as a blade, called from within. "Who is it?" "Someone looking for Mama Uduak," Elena said. The gate creaked open, revealing an old woman with a cane, her eyes sharp and questioning beneath a blue headscarf. "I am Uduak," she said. "What brings you here?" "Mr. Hayes sent me," Elena replied. The woman's expression froze. "Leonard Hayes?" "Yes," Elena said quietly. "He's very sick. He asked me to find Miriam Hassan." For a moment, only the wind answered. Then Mama Uduak turned and shuffled back inside. "Come in," she said. The room smelled of camphor and kerosene, its walls decorated with family portraits that looked older than time itself. She motioned to a stool. "Sit, child." Eleanor obeyed. "So," the old woman said, lowering herself into a chair. "He remembers her after all these years." "He never forgot," Eleanor said softly. "He sent me to find her." Mama Uduak gave a bitter laugh. "He forgot her every day he didn't return. He left her with a child and shame, and she still prayed for him." Her eyes glistened for a moment before hardening again. Eleanor hesitated, then asked, "Do you know where she went?" The old woman looked at her hands. "Miriam was gentle, but when a gentle heart breaks, it breaks quietly. She stayed in this village for years, waiting for him. Then one day, men came from the city, his men, I believe, offering money, saying he sent them. She saw through their lies. She hid with her daughter, then left the next dawn. By the time anyone noticed, the house was empty." "Did you ever hear from her again?" "No," Mama Uduak said, shaking her head. "But I know what happened later. The sickness took her 6 years ago. She's buried near the church hill." Eleanor's heart sank. "She's gone," she whispered. The old woman's gaze softened. "Yes, but her child lives. Aisha." The name felt holy on Elena's tongue. "You know where she is?" "She works as a nurse," Mama Uduak said. "Just like you, in the next town. She uses her mother's surname now, Aisha Hassan. She never speaks of her father. If he sent you, tread carefully. That girl carries her mother's strength and her father's anger." Eleanor nodded, clutching her bag. "Please, I need her address." Mama Uduak studied her for a long moment. "Why are you doing this?" "Because he's dying," Elena said. "And because some truths deserve to be told before the last breath leaves a man's body." The old woman sighed, reaching under her wrapper to pull out a folded scrap of paper. She handed it to Eleanor. "This is where she works. Don't tell her I sent you, and don't go at night. This story has ears." Eleanor tucked the paper into her bag, bowing slightly. "Thank you." Mama Uduak placed a wrinkled hand over hers. "Tell her something for me," she said softly. "Tell her Mama Uduak still prays for her." "I will," Elena promised. As they stepped outside, dusk was falling, painting the village gold and crimson. The air hummed with evening sounds, distant drums chirping crickets, the cry of a faraway rooster. Oho walked beside her, silent until they reached the crossroads. "You found what you came for?" he asked. "I think so." "Then go carefully. People like you don't walk unseen for long." Eleanor smiled faintly. "I'll manage." He nodded once and turned away, fading into the gathering night. Back at the empty house, Elena locked the door behind her. She sat on the edge of the bed where Miriam once slept, unfolding the small paper again. "Grace and Mercy Medical Clinic," it read. Her fingers traced the name. "So you followed in her footsteps," she murmured. "A nurse like your mother." Outside, the wind whispered through the dry leaves. She felt the weight of destiny pressing on her shoulders. That night, Eleanor dreamt of Miriam. In her dream, the woman stood in the doorway of the house holding a lantern. "Find her," she said, "but don't let the wolves see you." Eleanor woke before dawn, her heart racing. She didn't need more signs. She packed her bag and prepared for the road. Before leaving, she looked around the silent room one last time. The scarf, the letters, the drawing of a sun on the wall. "You kept his love even when he didn't deserve it," she whispered. Now your daughter will know. As the first light of morning brushed across the village, Elena stepped out and locked the gate. The red earth glowed beneath her feet. Somewhere far away, in a hospital bed surrounded by machines, Leonard Hayes stirred faintly, whispering a name from long ago. And for the first time since he fell ill, he smiled in his sleep. If you're feeling drawn into this story so far, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. It helps more people discover tales like this one. Tell me in the comments, if you were Elena, would you risk everything to deliver a dying man's last wish? The morning sun rose over Cuda like liquid fire, bleeding gold across the rooftops as Elena Brooks boarded a motorbike headed for the next town. The wind whipped at her scarf as red dust stung her cheeks. She clutched her bag tightly, feeling the weight of the photograph, the letters, and the birth certificate, evidence of a truth buried for decades. Every bump on the road felt like a heartbeat counting down. Leonard Hayes might not have much time left. The clinic came into view just after 9. It was a small white building with blue letters above the doorway. Grace and Mercy Medical Center. Children played outside near a water tank, while a tired-looking mother nursed a baby on a bench. Eleanor climbed down, thanked the rider, and walked toward the entrance. Inside, the air smelled faintly of antiseptic and sweat. A single ceiling fan spun lazily. Behind a wooden desk sat a young nurse in a faded uniform, scribbling on a form. She looked up as Elena approached. "Good morning," she said. "How can I help you?" "I'm looking for Nurse Aisha Hassan," Elena replied. The woman frowned. "Why?" "It's personal," Elena said, her voice low but steady. The nurse studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Wait here." She disappeared through a back door. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. She could hear her own breathing. Moments later, the door opened again, and Aisha stepped through. She was in her late 20s, tall and graceful, with the kind of quiet strength that comes from surviving storms. Her uniform was simple, her hair tied in a neat bun. When she saw Eleanor, her brow furrowed. "You asked for me?" "Yes," Elena said softly. "My name is Eleanor Brooks. I came from Abuja." Aisha's tone sharpened. "Abuja? What for?" Eleanor swallowed. "I came to talk to you about your father." Aisha froze. "I don't have a father." "You do," Eleanor said. "His name is Leonard Hayes." Silence stretched between them like a knife. Then Aisha turned sharply to the nurse at the desk. "Cover the reception," she said. Without another word, she led Eleanor into a small consultation room and closed the door behind them. The space was cramped but neat. A shelf of medical supplies stood against the wall, and sunlight filtered through the single window. Aisha crossed her arms. "Start talking." Elena placed the brown envelope on the table and slowly removed the birth certificate, the photograph, and one of Miriam's letters. "These belong to your mother," she said quietly. "Mr. Hayes asked me to find her." Aisha's face drained of colour. She reached for the photograph with trembling hands, tracing her mother's image with her fingers. "Where did you get this?" "From her house in Cuda village. Your mother kept everything. She wrote to him for years." Aisha sank into a chair. Her voice was low, trembling, but hard. "I remember that house, the blue curtain, the smell of palm oil and soap. She used to sit by the window every evening waiting for a car that never came." She looked up, her eyes fierce. "Now he remembers her? Now that he's dying?" Eleanor didn't flinch. "He regrets everything, Aisha. He's sick, but not senile. He remembers her name. He remembers you." Aisha laughed bitterly. "Regret doesn't bring back the years she spent alone. It doesn't bring back the nights I watched her cry." She stood pacing the small room. "I built this life with nothing. I worked through nursing school, washing dishes and cleaning toilets. No one gave me a penny. And now he wants me to forgive him because he's dying." Eleanor's eyes softened. "He doesn't want forgiveness. He just wants a chance to see you, to say sorry with his own voice." Aisha stopped, her back to her. "Sorry won't fix anything." "Maybe not," Elena said, but it might free you. Sometimes the closure we refuse is the peace we never find. A long silence followed. The only sound was the fan's dull creak. Then Aisha turned slowly, her face unreadable. If I go, no one must know. No reporters, no lawyers, no family. Of course, Elena said. We go quietly. And if I change my mind, you'll owe no one an explanation, Elena replied. Aisha exhaled shakily. Give me an hour to pack. She gathered her files, spoke briefly to another nurse, then disappeared into a small room. Elena waited outside, her stomach twisting with nerves. The weight of what she was about to do pressed down on her. She wasn't just reuniting a family, she was walking into the center of one man's guilt and another's greed. By the time Aisha returned, she had changed into a simple blue dress and wrapped her head in a scarf. She carried only a small brown bag. Let's go, she said. The road back to Abu Shah was long, but their silence spoke volumes. Aisha held the photograph tightly on her lap, her thumb brushing the image of her mother again and again. Sometimes she asked questions, what he looked like now, whether he still remembered her birthday, but mostly she stared out the window, lost between fury and longing. When they reached the city, dusk had already fallen. The hospital loomed ahead, its lights glowing against the dark sky. Eleanor felt her pulse quicken. We'll go through the back, she said. It's safer. They moved quickly through the service entrance, blending with the night shift staff. Matron Cole spotted Elena but said nothing, only raised an eyebrow as if she'd guessed too much. At the ICU corridor, 2 guards stood watch outside Leonard Hayes's room. One stepped forward. Only Nurse Elena is allowed in, he said. She's with me, Elena replied. Not this time, he said firmly. Orders. Elena was about to argue when a sharp voice cut through the hall. What's happening here? It was Daniel Hayes. His tie was loose, his eyes red with exhaustion, or maybe rage. What are you doing here again? He demanded. Eleanor straightened. Mr. Hayes asked for me. And who's this? Daniel's gaze turned to Aisha. You bringing strangers into my father's room now? She's not a stranger, Elena said evenly. Daniel took a step closer, squinting. Wait, I know that face. The village girl? Aisha lifted her chin. I'm Aisha Miriam Hayes. The hallway froze. Daniel's mouth fell open, then twisted into a disbelieving laugh. No, impossible. Believe it, Aisha said quietly. I'm your sister. For a heartbeat, silence reigned. Even the machines behind the door seemed to pause. Then Daniel's face hardened. You're lying. Am I? Aisha held up the birth certificate. It's all here. He snatched the paper, glanced at it, then threw it back. This is a scam. You planted this. You think you can waltz in here and steal what's ours? Leonard's voice came from inside, weak but clear. Let her in. Daniel spun around. Dad, don't. Now, the old man said, stronger this time. The guards stepped aside. Aisha took a deep breath and entered the room, Eleanor at her side. Leonard lay pale under the dim light, tubes trailing across his body like vines. His eyes fluttered open, and, for a moment, he looked at Aisha, as if seeing a ghost. Miriam, he whispered. Aisha's lips trembled. I'm not Miriam, she said softly. I'm Aisha. Leonard's hand reached out, shaking. She hesitated, then took it. Tears welled in his eyes. You look just like her. She waited for you, Aisha whispered, her voice breaking. All her life. He swallowed hard. And I failed her. I failed you. Eleanor turned away as tears stung her own eyes. In that small room, under the soft hum of machines, decades of silence broke, with a whisper of forgiveness neither had planned to give. Outside, Daniel clenched his fists and walked away, his shoes echoing down the hall. He didn't see what was happening inside. He didn't see the dying man smile for the first time in years, or the daughter he never met finally let herself cry. The next morning, the entire hospital hummed with whispers. Word had spread like wildfire. The billionaire had an unknown daughter. Journalists hovered outside the gates, microphones ready, while men in dark suits loitered by the entrance pretending to be visitors. Matron Cole stormed down the corridor, snapping at anyone who dared to stop and gossip. "If I hear one more rumour, I'll suspend the whole ward," she barked. But no one could stop the tide. The Hayes family's secret had escaped the ICU walls, and nothing could put it back again. Inside the room, Leonard Hayes looked weaker but calmer. He had insisted on sitting upright, his frail hands clutching the edge of the blanket. Aisha sat beside him, silent, her eyes red from crying. Eleanor stood near the window, her arms folded as she watched security guards double at the door. Daniel had not returned since last night. His phone calls, however, had. Lawyers, accountants, and journalists were all circling like vultures. Leonard broke the silence first. "Thank you," he whispered to Eleanor. "You did what no one else dared." She smiled faintly. "I only did what you asked." "No," he said, shaking his head slightly. "You did what was right." His eyes drifted to Aisha. "I don't have much time left. There are things that must be settled before I go." He gestured weakly toward the drawer beside his bed. "Open it," Eleanor obeyed, finding a sealed envelope with the words, "Private, to be read in the presence of my children," scrawled across it. "My lawyer has a copy," Leonard said softly, "but I kept the original here for one reason. I needed to make sure she was found first." Aisha looked at him, startled. "What is it?" "My will," he said simply. The word hung heavy in the room. Eleanor's heart sank. She had feared this moment. "Sir," she began, "perhaps you should rest." "No," he interrupted. "This is the only piece I'll have left to give." He reached out and took Aisha's hand. "For years, Daniel and his brothers built walls between us. I let them. I was too proud, too afraid to admit the cost of my mistakes. But I won't leave this world with lies." His breathing grew shallow. "I'm leaving the company to Daniel and the others. But everything that was Miriam's, the Kuda house, the accounts I hid from the world, belongs to Aisha. No lawyers, no signatures, just truth." Tears filled Aisha's eyes. "I don't need your money," she said. "I never wanted it." "It's not about money," Leonard rasped. "It's about dignity. Your mother deserved better. You deserve to have her name honored." Before Eleanor could speak, the door burst open. Daniel strode in with two men in suits. "Enough!" he shouted. "I warned you about this circus. Dad, you're not thinking straight." The guards moved forward, but Leonard raised a trembling hand. "Leave him." Daniel's eyes flicked to the envelope in Elena's hand. "What's that?" "None of your business," Leonard said. "It's my will." Daniel laughed bitterly. "Your will? Are you out of your mind? Do you know what this will do to us?" "To you," Leonard corrected. "It will do something to you." Daniel took a step closer, his voice dropping to a hiss. "You've let this woman," he pointed at Elena, "fill your head with nonsense." "Be careful what you say," Aisha cut in, standing up. "Don't talk about her like that," Daniel sneered. "Oh, so now the charity case speaks for the family?" He turned to Eleanor. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." "You're right," Elena said quietly. "I don't deal with people who bully the sick." Daniel's face twisted. "You think you can walk in here, bring some random woman and rewrite our lives? Not happening." He snatched the envelope from Eleanor's hand, tearing it open. Papers spilled to the floor. But instead of financial documents, there was only a handwritten letter. Daniel froze. Leonard's voice trembled but carried weight. "You wanted truth? Read it." Daniel hesitated, then began to read aloud. "To my sons, you will inherit wealth, but not peace. You have known power, but not love. The fortune I built cannot replace the family I lost. I pray you learn to forgive, not for me, but for yourselves." His voice cracked as he continued. "If you find this letter, know that I have met the daughter your pride refused to acknowledge. She is your blood. Treat her as such, or live with the curse of your father's silence." When he finished, the room was dead quiet. Daniel stared at the paper as if it had burned him. "This is madness," he muttered. You can't just... It's already done, Leonard said. His voice, though frail, was steady as stone. The lawyers have copies. The press will know soon enough. Daniel turned on Elena. You did this. You brought her here to destroy us. No, Elena said calmly. I brought her here to heal what was broken. He lunged forward, but Aisha stepped between them, her tone sharp as steel. Touch her, and you'll answer to me. For a moment the siblings locked eyes, one burning with rage, the other with defiance. Then Daniel spun on his heel and stormed out, slamming the door so hard that a picture frame fell from the wall. The crash echoed long after he was gone. Eleanor knelt to pick up the papers. I'm sorry, she whispered. Leonard shook his head. No, my dear, don't be sorry for doing what's right. The truth always hurts before it heals. He looked at Aisha again, a faint smile trembling on his lips. Promise me something, he said. Whatever happens, don't let them change who you are. I promise, Aisha said softly. That night the hospital grew quiet again. Reporters still lingered outside, but inside the ICU time seemed to pause. Eleanor sat by the window while Aisha read aloud one of her mother's letters, the same ones that had never been sent. Leonard listened, his eyes half closed, a faint smile on his face. You said you'd come back when the mango trees bloomed, Aisha read softly. They bloom every year, Leonard. Maybe one day you'll see them again. A single tear rolled down Leonard's cheek. Tell her, he whispered, voice fading. I see them now. Eleanor's throat tightened. She reached for his pulse. It was weak, fluttering like a candle at its last flicker. Rest now, she murmured. We're here. For a moment, peace filled the room. Then the monitors began to beep faster, louder. Aisha gasped. Doctor! She cried. Nurses rushed in, followed by Matron Cole. Code blue! Someone shouted. Eleanor stepped back as chaos erupted around them. The doctor pressed on Leonard's chest. 1, 2, 3, charge! The defibrillator hummed. The old man's body jolted. Again! Charge! Nothing. The doctor looked up, voice grim. Time of death, 11:47 p.m. The room fell silent. Aisha's sobs broke through the stillness. Eleanor closed her eyes, whispering a prayer under her breath. Matron Cole placed a hand on her shoulder. He's gone, she said softly. Outside, thunder rolled over the city. Rain began to fall again, tapping gently against the window pane as if the heavens themselves were mourning. The news broke before dawn. Oil magnate Leonard Hayes passes away at 85. By sunrise, every news outlet in Nigeria and beyond was running the story. Photographers crowded the hospital gates, flashing cameras at every nurse who walked out. Inside, chaos reigned, reporters demanding statements, lawyers demanding documents, and Daniel Hayes demanding silence. Matron Cole tried to maintain order, but even she knew this was bigger than hospital protocol. In the midst of the storm, Elena Brooks and Aisha Hassan sat in the dim hospital chapel, the only quiet place left. Candles flickered along the walls, their flames trembling in the morning draught. Aisha stared at the floor, her hands clutching her mother's old photograph. Her face looked older now, grief had carved new lines overnight. It feels strange, she whispered. I never knew him. Yet I feel like I lost him twice. Eleanor nodded gently. Sometimes closure hurts more than distance. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. It was one of Leonard's longtime lawyers, Mr. Clifford. He was a dignified man in a grey suit, carrying a briefcase and a weary expression. Miss Hassan, he said, bowing slightly. Mr. Hayes instructed me to deliver something to you and Nurse Brooks immediately after his passing. He placed a sealed envelope and a small flash drive on the table. The paper was embossed with Leonard's signature. Aisha hesitated before opening it. Inside was a letter written in shaky handwriting. My dearest daughter, if you are reading this, I am gone. You may wonder why I chose her, Nurse Eleanor, to bring you to me. I saw in her what I once saw in your mother, honesty, patience, and courage. I trust her with what remains of my truth. There is one final message for both of you. Plug in the drive. Listen together. Leonard Hayes. Aisha looked up, eyes trembling. He left us a recording. Eleanor nodded. Mr. Clifford pulled a laptop from his bag and connected the drive. The screen flickered, and the old man's face appeared, thin, fragile, yet proud. By the time you watch this, Leonard's voice began, I will be gone. I lived 85 years chasing everything except peace. I built towers, but I buried my heart beneath them. Miriam was my light, and I snuffed it out with pride. Aisha, if you're listening, forgive me. I couldn't be there for your first steps or your first tears, but I hope you'll let me be there in your last memory of me. Everything I built is yours, not because of blood, but because of love. His eyes turned to the camera, soft but steady. And Elena, thank you. You reminded me that compassion still exists in this world. You stayed when no one else did. I've left something for you too, in the box marked, for the one who stayed. You'll find it in my study at the estate. Use it well. The video ended. Silence filled the chapel, except for the faint hum of the laptop fan. Aisha wiped her eyes. He really meant it, she whispered. Eleanor nodded, her chest tightening. He did. Mr. Clifford closed the laptop carefully. The reading of the will is tomorrow at noon. Both of you should be there. Aisha frowned. I don't want his money. It's not just about money, he said. There are things that must be legally acknowledged. I suggest you come. As soon as he left, Aisha stood abruptly. I need air. She stepped outside, the sunlight blinding after the chapel's dimness. Reporters immediately swarmed, shouting questions. Miss Hassan, are you really his daughter? Will you challenge the will? Did the nurse manipulate him? Eleanor rushed out behind her, shielding her with an arm. No comments, she snapped. Security guards pushed the crowd back as they hurried into a waiting cab. Inside, Aisha pressed her palms to her temples. They'll tear me apart, she muttered. They'll say I came for his money. Let them talk, Elena said gently. Truth doesn't need defense. It just needs time. That afternoon, they drove to the Hayes estate for the private family gathering. The mansion stood like a silent fortress at the edge of the city, its tall gates glinting in the sun. Servants moved quietly about, avoiding eye contact. The air smelled of roses and tension. Inside, Daniel and his brothers were already seated, their lawyers in tow. Daniel's expression was cold, his voice colder. So the prodigal sister returns, he said. And the nurse too. What, you couldn't stay out of our business? Eleanor ignored him. Aisha's chin lifted. I didn't come for business. I came for truth. The family lawyer, Mr. Clifford, cleared his throat. Let's proceed. He opened the official document. According to Mr. Hayes's final instructions, the company holdings are divided among his 3 sons. However, the Kuda estate, trust fund, and personal accounts are to be transferred to Miss Aisha Hassan. Additionally, a scholarship foundation in Miriam Hassan's name will be established under her supervision. The room erupted. Daniel slammed his hand on the table. This is outrageous, one of his brothers shouted. He was manipulated. Sit down, Mr. Clifford said sharply. The recording you just heard will serve as testimony in court. Mr. Hayes was of sound mind. Daniel's eyes burned with rage. I'll contest this, he hissed. I'll prove you all conspired against him. He stood and stormed out, his footsteps echoing through the marble hall. The rest of the family followed in silence, leaving only Elena, Aisha, and the lawyer. Mr. Clifford turned to Elena. He mentioned something for you? The study is through that door. Elena walked across the room, her shoes silent on the rug. The study smelled of old books and cedar wood. Sunlight spilled across the massive oak desk. On it sat a small wooden box engraved with the words for the one who stayed. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside were three things: a handwritten note, a golden pocket watch, and a cheque folded neatly inside an envelope. The note read, "Eleanor, I once measured life by what I earned. You reminded me it's measured by what we give. Use this to build what others can't buy. Hope. My time ran out, but yours hasn't. Leonard." The cheque made her gasp. N50 million, payable in her name. But what moved her more was the pocket watch. She turned it over and found an engraving. "For those who wait, time rewards." A tear slid down her cheek. She closed the box and held it against her chest. Behind her, Aisha stood quietly watching. "He saw you," Aisha said softly. "Not many people did." Eleanor smiled faintly. "He just needed someone to remind him he wasn't beyond redemption." Outside, thunder rumbled again, though the sky was clear. It was as if the earth itself remembered him. The old man's voice still echoed in their minds. A confession, a plea, a final gift. Neither of them knew that Daniel wasn't done. Somewhere down the estate's long driveway, he made a phone call. His voice was low, dangerous. "Find out everything about that nurse," he said. "Everything." Rain threatened the afternoon sky as dark clouds gathered above the Hayes estate. The mansion, once a symbol of power, now felt like a fortress of ghosts. Inside, tension rippled through the walls like static. Aisha Hassan sat in the guest room, staring at the scholarship documents Mr. Clifford had left on the table. The ink hadn't even dried on her father's legacy, and already it felt like a battlefield waiting to explode. Downstairs, Daniel Hayes paced the marble floor, phone pressed tight to his ear. "I don't care what it takes," he hissed. "Dig into her past. Everything. The nurse, Elena Brooks, where she's from, who paid her bills, who she talks to. I want proof she manipulated him." A man's voice replied from the other end, muffled but confident. "Consider it done, sir." Daniel ended the call and leaned against the wall, his jaw clenching. "You thought you could steal my father's affection," he muttered. "But you'll regret it." Meanwhile, Elena stood outside the mansion under the grey sky, feeling the wind rise. Her cab hadn't arrived yet, and she wanted nothing more than to leave this place behind. But before she could, Aisha appeared behind her. "Leaving already?" she asked. Eleanor turned, smiling faintly. "My part is done. Your father found peace. That's all that matters now." Aisha shook her head. "No, it isn't. You stood by him when we didn't. Stay tonight, please." There was something sincere in her tone, something that felt almost like family. Eleanor hesitated, then nodded. "All right. One night." They walked back inside together. The storm broke soon after, rain hammering the windows, thunder rumbling like an angry memory. That evening, as dinner was served, the house felt divided. Aisha and Eleanor on one side, Daniel and his brothers on the other. Mr. Clifford had returned briefly to finalize signatures, his briefcase a shield against the rising hostility. Daniel's words cut through the clinking of silverware. "So tell me, nurse," he said, voice sharp with mockery, "how does it feel to inherit a fortune through pity?" Eleanor set her fork down gently. "I didn't inherit anything, Mr. Hayes. I only carried out your father's wish." Daniel leaned back, smirking. "Oh, come on. Don't act humble. You think we don't know about the money he left you?" Aisha's head snapped up. "Daniel." "No," he continued, eyes narrowing. "He gave her 50 million naira. 50 million for sitting by his bedside pretending to care." The room went silent. Eleanor's face didn't change, but her heart pounded. "Your father gave it to me," she said softly. "And not for pretending. For staying." Daniel scoffed. "A reward for loyalty or for manipulation?" "Enough!" Aisha slammed her palm on the table. "You talk about manipulation, but who was controlling him for decades? You or her?" Daniel rose, his chair scraping the floor. "Don't push me, Aisha. You don't know the kind of man he was." "I know enough," she said. "I know he died trying to make things right." "He died confused," Daniel roared. "And you," he pointed at Elena, "fed that confusion." Before Elena could respond, Mr. Clifford intervened. "That's enough, Mr. Hayes. This behaviour is beneath you." Daniel glared at him, then turned and stormed out into the rain, slamming the door so hard the chandelier rattled. The thunder swallowed his footsteps. Hours passed. The house grew quiet again, save for the storm. Elena sat alone in the study, staring at the old pocket watch Leonard had left her. Its steady ticking filled the silence. "For those who wait, time rewards," the engraving read. She turned it over and over, thinking about how quickly time had turned a dying man's confession into a war for his name. A knock broke her thoughts. It was Aisha, wrapped in a shawl. "I can't sleep," she admitted. "Neither can I," Eleanor said. They sat together near the window, watching lightning streak across the sky. "He was kind to me," Eleanor whispered. "Even in his last days, he tried to make jokes. He said he wanted to die listening to rain. I thought it was poetry. I didn't realize he meant it." Aisha smiled faintly. "He used to tell my mother the same thing. That thunder reminded him life wasn't done with him yet." She paused, eyes distant. "I think he waited for that sound before letting go." The tenderness of that moment was shattered when the lights suddenly went out. The mansion plunged into darkness. "Power cut?" Eleanor asked, frowning. Aisha shook her head. "We have generators." From the hallway came faint footsteps. Too soft, too deliberate. Eleanor stood. "Stay here," she whispered, moving toward the door. She opened it slightly and peered into the corridor. The flicker of lightning illuminated a shadow, a man moving quickly toward the back entrance. "Elena," Aisha whispered, panicked. "What is it?" "Someone's here," she said. "Stay behind me." They followed the faint glow of a flashlight down the hall. The air was thick with tension. When they reached the study, the door was ajar. Inside, drawers had been pulled open, papers scattered. The wooden box Leonard had left for Eleanor was gone. "No," she breathed. "He took it." Suddenly, a voice from behind them. "Looking for this?" Daniel stood in the doorway, soaked from the rain, the box in his hand. His expression was pure venom. "You think you can take everything from me? My father, my name, my inheritance? Put it down," Aisha said, her voice trembling. "You don't know what you're doing." "I know exactly what I'm doing," he snarled. "I'm ending this circus." Eleanor took a step forward. "Daniel, listen." "No, you listen." His voice cracked. "You all think I'm the villain, but I'm the only one who stayed. When he was dying, I was here, his son, not some stranger with a fake halo." His grip tightened on the box. "He owed me, not you." Lightning flashed, throwing his face into sharp relief, anger, pain, and something else beneath it. Grief. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then, quietly, Aisha said, "He didn't owe you anything. You just never learned how to love him." Daniel's breath hitched. The box slipped from his trembling hand and hit the floor with a dull crack. The watch rolled out, ticking faintly. The sound filled the silence like judgment. Daniel stared at it, then turned and stormed out without another word. When the door slammed shut, Eleanor exhaled shakily. "He'll be back," she murmured. "He's not done." Aisha knelt, picking up the watch. "Neither are we," she said. Outside, the storm began to calm, but the war for Leonard Hayes's legacy was only just beginning. If this story has you hooked, take a second to like, subscribe, and share so more. People can discover it. And tell me in the comments, do you think Daniel is a villain? Or just a broken son who never learned to heal? The next morning dawned heavy and grey, the storm clouds lingering like old grief refusing to leave. The Hayes estate sat in uneasy silence, its once proud halls now echoing with suspicion and fear. Servants whispered in corners, security guards doubled their patrols, and even the birds seemed reluctant to sing. Elena Brooks sat in the study where it had all happened, staring at the pocket watch Leonard had left her. Its brass shell glimmered faintly in the weak morning light. She turned it over again, reading the engraving for the 100th time. "For those who wait, time rewards. She had read it so often that the words felt like they were speaking directly to her. But this morning something was different. As she ran her thumb over the rim, she felt a tiny bump, something that hadn't been there before. Frowning, she held it closer to her ear and shook it gently. A faint rattle came from within. Her pulse quickened. "This isn't just a watch," she whispered. Before she could open it, Aisha entered the room quietly. "You didn't sleep, did you?" she asked. Eleanor smiled faintly. "Not much." "Neither did I," Aisha said, her voice flat. She sat down across from her, folding her arms. "Daniel's gone again. The lawyer says he hasn't answered any calls. He might be planning something." Eleanor nodded slowly. "He already is, and I think this watch is part of it." Aisha frowned. "What do you mean?" Eleanor showed her the faint seam along the edge. "Look, there's a hidden latch." She pressed it gently with her nail. The top of the watch clicked open, but instead of gears, a tiny folded paper sat inside. Aisha's eyes widened. Eleanor unfolded it carefully. It was a handwritten note, one line scrawled in Leonard Hayes' shaky writing. "The truth is buried deeper than the grave. Look beneath the mango tree." Aisha's hand flew to her mouth. "Mango tree? That's where my mother used to sit every evening." "At the Kuda house?" Eleanor asked. Aisha nodded, her eyes already glistening. She'd wait there till sunset. I thought she liked the breeze. Maybe she was waiting for him. Eleanor's mind raced. If he left this message, it means he knew something was hidden there. Something he couldn't reveal while he was alive. She folded the note back into her palm. "We're going back to Kuda." The decision was made before fear could argue. By noon, they were on the road again. Aisha behind the wheel this time, her eyes fixed on the horizon. The journey felt heavier now, as though every kilometre peeled back layers of the past. When they arrived, the village was quiet. Children paused their play to watch as the car rolled to a stop in front of the old cream house. Eleanor stepped out, the heat pressing against her skin. The mango tree still stood in the edge. Yard, its wide branches spreading like arms. Beneath it, dry leaves lay thick, and the air carried that sweet, earthy scent of memory. "It hasn't changed," Aisha whispered. "Even the swing's still there." The old wooden swing creaked softly in the wind, its rope worn but intact. They walked toward the tree together. Eleanor knelt, brushing aside the leaves. "He said, 'beneath,'" she murmured. What could he have hidden? She dug with her hands until her nails scraped against something hard. Aisha dropped beside her, helping. Within minutes, they unearthed a small metal box rusted at the corners. Elena pried it open carefully. Inside were two things: a stack of old photos wrapped in plastic and a sealed envelope marked, "For Miriam." Aisha gasped. "It's her name." The photos were of Leonard and Miriam, smiling in secret, laughing beside the same mango tree, holding baby Aisha. "He kept them," Elena whispered. "He must have buried them when she left, to keep them safe." Aisha's hands trembled as she lifted the envelope. It was unopened. "He wrote this, but she never got it," she murmured. "He must have hidden it after she disappeared." Tears rolled down her cheeks. He loved her, Elena. He just didn't know how to show it. Before Elena could respond, the sound of tires crunching on gravel made them both freeze. A black SUV pulled up to the gate. The door swung open and Daniel stepped out. "I should have known you'd come here," he said, voice cold as the metal box they held. "Digging up ghosts now?" Aisha stood, her jaw tightening. "You have no right to be here." "Oh, I have every right," Daniel snapped. "That's my father's property." He spotted the box in Elena's hands and his eyes narrowed. "What's that?" "None of your business," she said, stepping back. "You just don't quit, do you?" He advanced slowly. "I told you both to stay away from this family." Elena's heart pounded. "Daniel, stop! Your father didn't want this." "Don't you dare speak for him," Daniel shouted. "He was sick, weak. You poisoned him with guilt." Lightning cracked across the sky, even though there was no storm. The air grew tense. Daniel reached forward and tried to snatch the box, but Aisha shoved him back. "You're pathetic," she said through gritted teeth. You can't stand that he left something you can't buy. Love. Daniel's face contorted with rage. Love, he spat. You think this is love? He abandoned her. He left you. And now you stand here pretending you're his salvation. Eleanor stepped between them, voice trembling but firm. He may have failed as a father, Daniel, but you're failing as a son. Don't let hate make you what he regretted becoming. For a moment, the fury in Daniel's eyes flickered into something else. Pain, raw and real. But then he turned away sharply. You'll regret this, he muttered. Both of you. He stormed back to his SUV, slammed the door and sped off, leaving a cloud of dust in his wake. Aisha stood frozen, breathing hard. He's going to do something terrible, she said quietly. Let him try, Elena said. We have the truth now. They carried the box inside and sat in the dim living room. Aisha placed the unopened letter on the table and stared at it. It feels wrong to open something meant for her, she whispered. She's gone. Eleanor shook her head gently. Then maybe you should open it for her. Aisha hesitated, then carefully tore the envelope open. The letter inside was dated 30 years ago. Leonard's handwriting wavered across the page. My dearest Miriam, I know you will never forgive me, but I write this because I must. I was afraid of losing everything, status, wealth, control, but I lost more by losing you. If this letter ever finds you, know that I loved you in silence every day. I built an empire, but every brick carried your name. If our daughter grows to read this, tell her I loved her before I ever saw her face. I left a part of my soul beneath the mango tree, so that even if the world forgets, this ground will remember us. By the end, Aisha was crying openly. Eleanor wiped her own tears silently. He wasn't perfect, Aisha whispered, folding the letter against her heart. But he tried. That has to mean something. It does, Eleanor said softly. It means he finally told the truth. Outside, the wind rustled through the mango leaves, scattering a few more dry ones to the ground, like blessings falling from the past. Neither of them saw the black car parked far down the road, hidden behind the trees. Inside, Daniel sat watching through binoculars. Jaw clenched. His voice trembled when he spoke into the phone. Make sure it looks like an accident, he said. They're not walking away this time. Night descended upon Kuda village like a curtain pulled over secrets too long hidden. The sky was moonless, and the only light came from the flickering lanterns inside the old cream house. Elena Brooks sat by the window listening to the distant rustle of palm leaves. Aisha Hassan had fallen asleep on the couch, clutching her mother's photograph like a child holding faith. For a moment the world seemed peaceful, too peaceful. Then came the faint smell of smoke. Eleanor frowned, sniffing the air. It wasn't cooking fire. It was thicker, harsher. Her pulse spiked. She rose quietly and stepped outside. The wind carried embers, tiny orange sparks drifting from behind the house. Her stomach clenched. No, she whispered. She ran around the side of the house and froze. Flames were crawling up the old mango tree, licking its branches, spreading fast through the dry leaves below. The fire roared like something alive, angry. Aisha! She screamed, rushing back inside. Wake up! Fire! Aisha jolted awake, eyes wide in terror. Smoke already, curled through the open window. They grabbed what they could, the letters, the metal box, the photograph, and stumbled out into the yard. The flames had grown, feeding greedily on wood and grass. Sparks leapt onto the thatched fence, setting it ablaze. Villagers began to shout from afar, running with buckets and bowls. It's spreading, someone yelled. Eleanor coughed as smoke filled her lungs. The back gate, she gasped. Aisha nodded, clutching the box, but when they reached the path, a dark figure stepped out of the shadows. Daniel. His face glowed orange in the firelight, twisted with fury and guilt. You should have stayed out of it, he said, his voice low and trembling. You couldn't just let it die with him, could you? Aisha's eyes blazed hotter than the fire. You did this? He didn't answer. His silence was answer enough. "Why?" Eleanor demanded, her voice raw. "He was your father." Daniel's expression cracked. "My father died the day he chose strangers over his blood." Before Elena could reply, another explosion of flame lit the night. Part of the roof had caught fire. Aisha screamed as debris fell around them. "We have to go," she shouted. Daniel took a step forward. "Give me the box." "No," Aisha said, holding it tighter. "It's my mother's." Daniel lunged. Eleanor threw herself between them. They crashed to the ground, the box rolling away into the grass. Daniel pinned Elena's wrists, fury burning in his eyes. "You think you're a savior?" he spat. "You're nothing. You're just the nurse who killed him with kindness." "Let her go," Aisha shouted. She grabbed a fallen branch, striking Daniel across the shoulder. He cried out, stumbling back. Elena scrambled to her feet, grabbing Aisha's arm. "Run!" They sprinted toward the village road as the flames devoured the house behind them. Villagers rushed past with buckets, forming a line to fight the fire. Someone shouted, "Call the fire service!" Another yelled, "There's a man inside!" Eleanor spun around. Daniel was still there, coughing violently, his silhouette framed by fire. For a split second she hesitated. "He'll die!" she cried. Aisha's eyes widened. "Eleanor, no!" But she was already running back into the burning yard. Heat slammed against her face like a wall. "Daniel!" she shouted. "Where are you?" Through the smoke, she saw him collapsed near the mango tree, one arm over his face. She pulled him up by the collar. "Come on," he groaned. Why would you save me?" "Because he wouldn't want another death on his conscience," she shouted. Together they stumbled out just as the roof gave way behind them, sparks raining down like stars. Outside, Aisha ran to help, grabbing Daniel's other arm. The villagers dragged them to safety, pouring water on their clothes. The three of them collapsed on the dirt road, coughing and gasping, as the house burned to the ground. When it was over, only the mango tree remained standing, blackened but alive. Its charred branches reached toward the sky like a survivor raising its hands in prayer. Daniel sat in silence, staring at the ashes. His voice was barely a whisper. "I didn't mean for it to go this far, I just wanted him to love me." Aisha looked at him, tears streaming down her soot-streaked face. He did. He just didn't know how to show it. The air smelled of smoke and sorrow. Elena's hands trembled as she opened the half-burnt box. Inside, everything was ruined, except the silver key. It had survived, blackened but intact. She held it up, her voice soft but certain. Maybe this is what he meant when he said time rewards those who wait. Some truths never die, no matter how much fire you throw at them. Daniel covered his face with both hands. "What have I done?" Aisha reached for him slowly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You can still make it right," she said. "Start by rebuilding what you burned." He looked up at her, defeated, broken human at last, and nodded faintly. As dawn broke, the villagers stood silently before the smoking ruins. The mango tree, though scarred, stood tall among the ashes. Eleanor watched the sunlight filter through its branches and whispered, "He said he left his soul here. Maybe this was what he meant." Aisha closed her eyes and leaned against her. "He's free now," she murmured. Elena smiled faintly, exhaustion and peace mingling in her heart. "So are we." Far away in Abuja, the morning news reported the fire as an accident at the late Leonard Hayes' ancestral property. No one mentioned the buried box or the watch or the two women who had walked out of the flames carrying more truth than the world could handle. But under the mango tree, the ashes still whispered stories only the wind could hear. 3 days after the fire, Kuda village had returned to its uneasy rhythm. Charred walls still smoked faintly where the Hayes ancestral house once stood, and the mango tree, blackened yet unbroken, cast its crooked shadow across the ruins. The villagers spoke of the fire in hushed tones, their stories changing with every retelling. Some said it was lightning, others whispered of curses and restless spirits. Eleanor Brooks sat beneath that same mango tree, exhaustion lining her face. Her palms were bandaged from the burns she'd gotten dragging Daniel out of the flames. The silver key she'd salvaged hung around her neck on a thin string. Aisha Hassan knelt nearby, arranging flowers where the house once stood. Neither spoke for a long while. Finally, Aisha broke the silence. "The police came this morning," she said quietly. "They think it was arson." Eleanor's eyes darkened. "Did Daniel confess?" Aisha shook her head. "He didn't have to. He went to the station himself. Said it was his fault, that he started the fire trying to scare us. But it got out of control." Her voice wavered. "They've charged him, but he didn't resist." Eleanor stared out toward the dirt road. "Maybe that's his way of finding peace." Aisha nodded slowly. "He asked to see me before they took him away. He said he was sorry for everything. That he wanted to rebuild what he destroyed, even if it was from behind bars." "That's something," Elena murmured. "Forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but sometimes it's the only thing that lets us walk away from it." The sound of a car approaching broke their thoughts. Mr. Clifford stepped out, wiping sweat from his brow. "Ladies," he greeted, "I'm glad I found you here. There's been a development." He held out a document sealed with the emblem of the Hayes Foundation for Life and Legacy. Before his death, Mr. Hayes established a trust, a humanitarian fund meant to build hospitals and nursing schools across Nigeria. But here's the part no one knew. He named both of you as its co-directors. Aisha blinked. "Us?" "Yes," Mr. Clifford said, smiling faintly. "His daughter and the nurse who gave him back his conscience. The foundation's starting capital has already been transferred. 400 million naira. The first project site is this village." Eleanor's breath caught. This place?" He nodded. "He wanted a clinic built right here, on this very land. Said it was where his life began again." Aisha pressed a hand to her mouth. Tears welled in her eyes. "He's turning the ashes into something good," she whispered. Mr. Clifford nodded. "That was his final instruction. I thought you should know." He handed Elena an envelope. "He also left you this." Inside was a letter, written in Leonard Hayes' elegant scrawl. "Elena, if you're reading this, then you survived the storm. Literally and otherwise. You reminded me that redemption doesn't erase mistakes. It simply proves they don't define us forever. I've given you 2 gifts, the watch that guards time and the work that outlives it. Build something beautiful with it, and when the mango trees bloom again, know that I am watching with pride. Leonard Hayes." Eleanor folded the letter carefully, pressing it to her heart. "He always talked about second chances," she said softly. "Now he's given us one." Aisha smiled through tears. "He gave himself one too." They stood together beneath the mango tree as the afternoon sun broke through the clouds. For the first time in weeks, the light felt gentle instead of harsh. Villagers gathered slowly, murmuring as Mr. Clifford explained the plans for the new clinic. Some cheered, some wept. Hope, fragile but real, began to stir among them. Later that evening, Eleanor and Aisha visited the small cemetery at the edge of the village, where Leonard's ashes had been buried beside a fresh stone marked Miriam Hassan Hayes. Aisha placed a bouquet of white lilies on the grave. "They're together now," she whispered. Eleanor knelt beside her. "Do you think he's at peace?" "I think," Aisha said softly, "he's finally home." They stayed until sunset, the sky painted gold and crimson. As they turned to leave, a faint breeze passed through the mango leaves behind them, carrying the scent of smoke and rain, but this time it smelled like renewal. Aisha looked back once more. "He waited his whole life to make things right," she said. "It took him dying to learn how to live," Eleanor nodded. "Then let's live the way he couldn't." They walked back toward the village, their silhouettes long against the dying light, 2 women bound not by blood, but by purpose. The silver key around Eleanor's neck glinted once in the sunlight before fading into dusk. That night, as the village slept, the first stars blinked awake over Cuda. The ruins of the Hayes house lay quiet, but beneath the soil, the roots of the old mango tree pulsed with life again. Time, it seemed, had kept its promise. 1 year later, the mango trees bloomed again in Cuda village. Their yellow fruits hung heavy over a brand new building, standing proudly where ashes once lay. A white signboard glimmered under the sun. The Miriam Hassan Health Foundation, built in honor of love and redemption. The grand opening drew villagers from miles around. Children wore their Sunday best, mothers clapped in rhythm, and elders wept quietly as drums echoed through the air. For them, this was more than a clinic. It was proof that pain could become purpose. Elena Brooks stood near the steps, dressed in a crisp white uniform with a soft blue scarf around her neck. The silver key Leonard had left, her still hung from its chain, now polished and gleaming in the sunlight. Beside her, Aisha Hassan adjusted her badge. Director of Nursing, Cuda Memorial Clinic. "This feels unreal," Aisha murmured, watching the crowd gather. "I keep thinking I'll wake up and it'll all disappear." Elena smiled. "It won't. You made this real, Aisha. You and him." She turned as a car door shut behind them. Daniel Hayes stepped out slowly, escorted by a correctional officer. He was thinner now, dressed in plain clothes, but his eyes were clearer than before. Permission for temporary release had been granted, so he could attend the dedication. The villagers murmured, some glaring, others pitying. Aisha approached him first. "You came," she said softly. He nodded. "I had to." He would have wanted it. Eleanor watched as Daniel looked around the compound, the freshly painted walls, the crowd of smiling faces, the symbol of the mango tree etched above the entrance. "He'd have been proud," he whispered. "You turned his regret into something that actually matters." Aisha's voice trembled, but her words were steady. "He gave us the chance. We just took it." Mr. Clifford arrived next, carrying a small bronze urn. The crowd fell silent as he climbed the steps to the podium. "Before we dedicate this place," he said, "we fulfill the last part of Mr. Leonard Hayes's written wish to return his ashes to the earth beneath the mango tree, beside the woman he never forgot." Eleanor and Aisha exchanged glances. Together they stepped forward. The crowd parted as they carried the urn to the old tree. Its trunk bore scars of the fire, but its leaves shimmered green and full again. Eleanor knelt, using the silver key to open a small stone box buried at its base. Gently she poured the ashes inside. As the dust mingled with the soil, a warm breeze swept through the branches. The leaves rustled softly, like a whisper of gratitude carried by the wind. Aisha closed her eyes. "He's home now," she said. Eleanor placed a hand over her shoulder. "And so is she." When they turned back, the villagers began to sing, a slow, haunting song about forgiveness, rebirth, and love that endures beyond life. Even Daniel bowed his head, tears glistening in his eyes. After the ceremony, as the sun dipped low, Eleanor walked through the halls of the new clinic. Every room smelled of new paint and hope. Nurses unpacked supplies, children peeked through windows, and in one corner stood a bronze plaque that read, "In memory of those we failed, and in honor of those who gave us another chance." She paused, running her fingers across the words. Aisha joined her quietly. "Do you ever think about him?" "Every day," Eleanor said softly, but not with sadness anymore, just gratitude. They stepped outside again, watching as villagers lined up for the first free medical outreach. Daniel helped distribute water bottles, his movements slow, humbled. When he noticed Elena watching, he walked over. "I don't deserve forgiveness," he said quietly. "No one truly does," Elena replied. "We just try to live like we've earned it." He nodded, eyes downcast. "When I get out, I want to keep helping. Maybe here if they'll have me." Aisha smiled faintly. We'll see, she said. But first, serve your time. Learn peace. As Daniel walked away to rejoin the officer, the sun broke through the clouds, painting the mango leaves gold. Elena turned to Aisha. You know, the first night I met your father, he said something strange. He told me he wasn't afraid of dying. He was afraid of being forgotten. Aisha tilted her face toward the sky. Then he got his wish. He'll never be forgotten. They stood side by side, the sound of laughter and drums echoing behind them. In that moment, it didn't matter how their stories had begun. What mattered was how they ended. Two women, once strangers, now bound by love, loss, and the unbreakable will of a man who found redemption too late, but not too late to make it count. As evening fell, a little boy approached them shyly with a drawing. Ma, he said to Aisha, is this the man you built the clinic for? He held up a picture of an old man, under a mango tree smiling beside two women. Aisha's eyes filled with tears. She knelt down and smiled at him. Yes, she said softly, that's him. Was he a good man? The boy asked. Eleanor and Aisha exchanged a long, knowing look. He became one, Eleanor said. The boy nodded solemnly, satisfied, then ran off toward the music. Aisha exhaled slowly. You think he heard that? Eleanor looked toward the tree swaying gently in the twilight. I think he did. The sound of laughter rose again as night claimed the sky, and fireflies blinked like tiny blessings around them. Under the mango tree, the tree that had witnessed love, loss, and rebirth, the earth rested quietly, holding the ashes of a man who had once been lost, but found his peace in the hearts he left behind. And somewhere beyond the horizon, as the first stars appeared, the wind carried his voice, soft, content, eternal. Thank you for staying. The end.